So after expressing in week 1 that we hoped it would be the first and last edition of the Timeform pub quiz, we move on to week 3. Still no idea when racing will resume, but for as long as we're in sporting lockdown, we'll be here to provide some entertainment, hopefully, and some quizzing as well. Week 3, as I say, but the same format as the previous 2. A series of rounds of different topics across the racing spectrum. 5 questions in each, but with the odd bonus point thrown in for good measure. And the category that I've chosen to start us off this week is the Champion Bumper at Cheltenham. Question 1 then. The horse with the highest bumper rating in Timeform's long history was achieved in a race other than the Champion Bumper. Can you name that horse? Question 2. Who was AP McCoy's only winner in the Champion Bumper? And for a bonus point, which subsequent Hennessy winner finished second that day? Question 3. Mr. Willie Mullins landed his 10th Champion Bumper with Fernie Hollow in the 2020 edition. Which of those 10 did he ride himself? Which of those 10 did he ride himself? Quick clue, there's only one. Question 4. Who was the last Champion Bumper winner to win the following season's Supreme? The last Champion Bumper winner to win the following season's Supreme. And finally, which Champion Bumper winner was by a sire who won a Coventry Stakes at Royal Ascot? Which Champion Bumper winner was by a sire who won a Coventry Stakes at Royal Ascot? And again, a little tidbit on the end, a little bonus point for you. Not only name that horse, but name the sire as well. So, that's a Champion Bumper round done with. Hope you've done well. We're back later with the answers.
So this round is called Guess the Horse. I'm going to be reading quotes from Timeform manuals, and the idea is that they guess the horse from the quote. So we'll start with quote number 1. He was a brilliant miler, close to being the best seen in Europe in recent years before Arkle came along. Quote number 2. He may not be so consistent as would be ideal, but on his day, there isn't a sprinter in the land that can hold a candle to him. Quote number 3. He won after overcoming serious problems created by a troubled passage, Richard Hughes being forced to switch when making headway a furlong out and then having to wait for a gap to appear in the last 100 yards or so. Quote number 4. Her all-the-way 7-length triumph earned her the highest Timeform rating achieved by a 2-year-old filly for over 40 years. Finally, quote number 5. Deserves to be judged on his own fine record and not simply remembered as a horse who became a yardstick by which to measure one of the immortals of the British turf.
So on to the next round, which is all to do with 20 times champion jockey AP McCoy. So the first question is, in 1997, he won the Champion Hurdle and the Gold Cup in the same year, but which horses did he ride to those successes? So on which horses did he win the 1997 Champion Hurdle and the Gold Cup in the same year? Question number 2. At which course did he break Sir Gordon Richards' record for most winners in a season in 2002? So when he broke Sir Gordon Richards' record for most winners in a season, which course did he break that record at? Question number 3. Which horse did he win the Game Spirit at Newbury on before announcing he was going to retire at the end of the season. So on which horse did he win the Game Spirit at Newbury before announcing he was going to retire at the end of that season? Question number 4, how many Cheltenham Festival winners did he ride throughout his career? And bonus point if you can name the final one of those. So how many Cheltenham Festival winners did he ride? And bonus point for which one was his last? And then the final question, what was unusual about his third to Red Marauder in the 2001 Grand National? So what was unusual when he finished third in the 2001 Grand National?
Hello, this round is all about the week that should have been, specifically the Craven meeting at Newmarket. So without further ado, we'll move on to the first question, which is, who is the last horse to win both the Nell Gwyn Stakes at the Craven meeting and the 1,000 guineas? So who is the last horse to win both the Nell Gwyn and the 1,000 guineas? Moving on to question 2, and in a similar vein, the Craven Stakes is often considered a key trial for the 2,000 guineas, but who is the last horse to win both those races? So who is the last horse to win the Craven Stakes and the 2,000 guineas? Moving on to question 3, the Earl of Sefton Stakes at last year's Craven meeting was a red-hot contest, with Zabiel Prince, a subsequent Group 1 winner in France, beating Forest Ranger. But what we want to know is which horse who finished third that day went on to win a Group 1 in Britain later in the season. So which horse finished third in last year's Earl of Sefton Stakes before going on to win a Group 1 in Britain? It's back to the Craven Stakes for question 4. And the 2014 renewal of the race was probably one of the best in recent memory, with Tuamore beating the Grey Gatsby and Postponed. But what we want to know is how many Group 1s did those 3 horses go on to win after the Craven? So just to clarify, that doesn't include the National Stakes won by Tuamore as a 2-year-old. We want to know how many Group 1s did Tuamore, the Grey Gatsby and Postponed go on to win after filling the first 3 places in the 2014 renewal of the Craven. And lastly, question 5, a slightly trickier question perhaps, but what we want to know is which subsequent Group 1 winner in Britain can boast the unusual achievement of having 2 maiden wins on his CV, the first of which came at the Craven meeting. So, which subsequent Group 1 winner in Britain can boast the unusual achievement of having 2 maiden wins on his CV, the first of which came at the Craven meeting?
Racecourse number 1 is the tightest track in Britain. It's left-handed, very sharp, and has a short run-in on both courses. Track number 2 is the southernmost racecourse in Britain. The southernmost racecourse in Britain. Track number 3 is the only course in Britain that has no grandstand. That's the only course in Britain that does not have a grandstand. There are 2 courses in Britain that have statues of Arkle. Name them both. Which British racecourse has, at one time or another, had polytrack, fibre sand and Peter surfaces?
So this round is going to be all about Arkle, Timeform's highest rated chaser. Question 1. What was the aggregate winning distance for Arkle's 3 Cheltenham Gold Cup wins? Question 2. Which 2 previous Cheltenham Gold Cup winners did Arkle defeat when winning the 1964 renewal? Question 3. Arkle is named after a mountain in the Scottish Highlands near his owner's holiday home. Which of her 2 horses were named after Arkle's neighbouring mountains? Question 4. There have been 3 dual winners of the Hennessy Gold Cup at Newbury, now the Ladbrokes Trophy. All of them also successful in the Cheltenham Gold Cup. Arkle is one. Can you name the other 2? Finally, question 5. Arkle's owner, the Duchess of Westminster, saw her colours carried to victory at Aintree by which Grand National winner?
Now for the answers for the champion bumper section of the Week 3 Timeform pub quiz. Question 1, we wanted to know the highest rated bumper horse in Timeform history from that demolition job in the Aintree bumper in 1999-2000. That was a horse called Quadco. Question 2, we wanted to know AP McCoy's one and only champion bumper winner, and also for a bonus we wanted to know which subsequent Hennessy winner finished second that day. McCoy's winner was Lieberman, and the runner-up that day was subsequent Hennessy winner Trebolgan. Mentioned that Willie Mullins won his 20th champion bumper this season with Fernie Hollow. The only one of those that was ridden by the man himself was Wither or Witch. Answer to question 4, that was the last champion bumper winner to follow up in the Supreme the following season. That was Champagne Fever. And question 5, finally, we wanted to know which champion bumper winner was by a sire who won the Coventry Stakes at Royal Ascot. That sire was Fastliev, and that horse was Cork All Star for Jesse Harrington and Barry Geraghty. Good luck in the next round.
It's time for the answers to the Guess the Horse round. Quote number 1 was talking about Camford Cliffs from the 2011 annual. Quote number 2 was Batage from last year's annual, 2019. Quote number 3, Soul Power, talking specifically about his Nunthorpe win from 2014. Quote number 4, Lady Aurelia, specifically the Queen Mary that she won in 2016. And finally, the final quote was Excelebration.
So moving on to the answers for the round all to do with 20 times champion jockey AP McCoy. So the first question was, which horses did he win the 1997 Champion Hurdle and Gold Cup on? It was, of course, Make a Stand in the Champion Hurdle and Mr Mulligan in the Gold Cup. Question number 2, at what course did he break Sir Gordon Richards' record for most winners in a season? It was Warwick. Question number 3, which horse did he win the Game Spirit on at Newbury before announcing he was going to retire at the end of that season? It was Mr Mole. Question number 4, how many Cheltenham Festival winners did he ride throughout his career? It was 31, and the bonus point for what was his last? It was the Alan King trained Uxizandra in the 2015 Ryanair. And finally, question number 5, what was unusual about his third in the 2001 Grand National on Blowing Wind? It was, of course, he remounted. There was only the first 2, Red Marauder and Smarty, that actually got round unscathed.
Okay, so the answer to question 1, who was the last horse to win both the Noel Gwynn Stakes and the 1,000 Guineas? That was Speciosa, who won both races for Pam Sly in 2006. The answer to question 2, who was the last horse to win both the Craven Stakes and the 2,000 Guineas? That was Haft, who won both races for Barry Hills in 2004. The answer to question 3, which horse finished third in last year's Earl of Sefton Stakes before going on to win a Group 1 in Britain later that season? That was Moustachery, who went on to win the Lockinge Stakes at Newbury on his very next start. The answer to question 4, how many Group 1s did Tuamo, the Grey Gatsby and Postponed win after filling the first 3 places in the 2014 Craven? The answer to that one was 6. Tuamo didn't win at the highest level after his Craven success, though he was placed on multiple occasions. The Grey Gatsby won 2 Group 1s in the French Derby and the Irish Champion Stakes, while Postponed ended his career with 4 wins at the highest level, so that gives us a total of 6. And the answer to question 5, which Group 1 winner in Britain has the unique achievement on his CV of having won 2 maidens, the first of which at the Craven meeting? That was Mukadram, who finished second past the post in the Wood Ditton at the Craven meeting in 2012, but the winner that day was later disqualified due to a failed drugs test, so Mukadram was awarded the race, but by that point he had already gone 1 better over the same course and distance. So if you go on his profile on Timeform.com, you'll see that he's actually been credited with 2 wins in maiden company, and of course he went on to win the Coral Eclipse for William Haggis in 2014.
Answers for the racecourses section of the quiz. Question 1, the tightest jumps track in Britain was Fakenham. Number 2, the southernmost track in Britain was Newton Abbot. Number 3, the only course in the country that does not have a grandstand was of course Bangor. The 2 statues of Franco at 2 British racecourses, that was question number 4. Those were York and Ascot. The question number 4, York and Ascot. And the answer to number 5 is Wolverhampton. So that's the only track in the country that's had polytractor Peter and fibre sand at one time or another. And that was Wolverhampton.
So we'll go with the answers to the Arkle round. So the answer to question 1 was 55 lengths. Question 2 was Millhouse and Passau. Question 3, Benstack and Foynhaven. Question 4, Mandarin and Denman. And finally question 5, Last Suspect.